Karen was alone at home when she was maliciously robbed. The thieves were in and out in moments but took more than £2,000. By the time she realized, both they and her money were long gone. All she can remember was responding to an email from what she thought was her bank, asking her to confirm her security details. That was all the invitation the criminals needed.
You can't see cybercrime, but there are ways to avoid it. At Barclays, we'll never ask you to confirm your security details by email.
This is a Global Original Podcast. Hello and welcome to Full Disclosure with me, James O'Brien, a podcast project conceived chiefly to allow me to spend a little bit more time than is normally available with people with whom I'd like to spend a little bit more time than is normally available.
Thank you.
A category into which Daniel Radcliffe slots effortlessly. And we will move on shortly to the fact that you seem to have breached the space-time vortex with the amount of work that you've got imminently arriving on our screens and indeed our stages. But Full Disclosure usually begins at the beginning, which in your case is quite a tricky one, because you were arguably the most recognisable child on the planet during your childhood. And as an interviewer, I'm not really lacking in confidence, but when I'm talking to somebody like you, I kind of can't think of a single question that you haven't already answered at least 1 million times.
Right. They come up occasionally, but it is hard.
Yes, I can imagine that it is.
Yeah, I mean, but it's... Yeah, I don't know, but don't feel bad about it.
Well, no, it's not that I feel bad about it necessarily, but it's more your time and energy, isn't it?
No, but there's limited questions you can ask a person, isn't it? I mean, yeah. Also, I think there's the thing of it's just an odd thing to I was talking about yourself is not a sort of very natural thing to do, especially if you find like the people who just are fine with talking about themselves for days and days and days are slightly odd. So I think that there's
You've not heard my radio show.
No, but like no, but I mean,
I know what you mean.
I think there's something about doing press where like, there's an imbalance between how interesting everybody else finds me and how interesting I find myself, because I've just lived my life and it's just been my life.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's always like, I suppose, odd to me to try and then make it or to realize that it is interesting to other people.
That's beautifully put, actually, because of course it is, although we don't know a great deal about you, which is presumably deliberate. I mean, there's always talk of attention and being followed around by paparazzi, but oddly, I think watching your life and career, you do exercise agency. You do have quite a lot of control over how much of you is out there.
Yeah, and I think you have to, and I think there's a balance to, look, I'm a public person who, after a certain point, that was, consensual. Like after a certain point, I was, contributing to that and wanted it to be the case, because being, famous or whatever allows me to do my job and allows me to do my job in a certain way that gives me a lot of control over what I do. So I think and you realize that, I hate when I see actors go into interviews and clearly not want to talk at all. When people are just being like, press is press and you shouldn't, like, the idea that like doing press is selling out is just idiotic. But I do think there is also like, you don't need to tell people everything. You don't need to talk about, and that also was like a journey of learning that I could say no to things. That's actually been a huge part. I saw a photo shoot the other day from when I was like 15, and I am just tangled up in the wires of headphones and have the headphones on. I was like, oh man, that was at the time when I didn't realize I could say no, I don't want to do that in a photo shoot.
Because you like to please, I think it's fair to say, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I interviewed you briefly a few years ago, and I was struck by just how charming you are. You recorded a little message for my children, which you absolutely didn't have to do. But you also, because I never ask normally in these circumstances, but, the kids at the time, kind of quite a big crossover. Yes, exactly that. But I mean, you're obviously a very good actor, so of course you could have been acting, but it didn't seem to be done under duress or with a sense of, here we go again. There was a fundamental decency there.
I think that I do feel genuinely lucky to and appreciate what a crazy, amazing. Like when a lot of, not all the time, but sometimes when kids meet me, it is like they are meeting Father Christmas.
Yes, it is.
Like it is such a specific childhood place that these films sit for people. And without meaning to sound too worthy, and I will sound a bit worthy when I say this, I think there is a responsibility that comes with that. And I completely, like, I have actor friends who will be out, and if someone comes up to them for an autograph, they say no. And I think that is completely within their rights to do that. People would argue and have argued that it is within my rights to do that too. I don't feel like I can in the same way. I do feel like you have to do a bit more when you're famous for something like Potter.
But being part of people's childhood, as opposed to just being someone that we saw on Saturday night,
right? And it's something that, like, if they, I'm aware, I have not got every interaction with every fan I've ever met perfect, I'm sure, but there is an awareness of, like, if you're meeting a 7-year-old, you may not remember meeting that 7-year-old in a few years, but he will remember meeting you, and that one interaction that you have with them can cast or rather than a 7-year-old, more likely like a 20-year-old who has watched the films already. The interaction they have with you can cast their watching of the films in an entirely new light, and you never want to damage something that's that special to people.
Yes, you mentioned learning. You're not the same person you were when you did that photo shoot as a 15-year-old, but it occurs to me there's not really anyone you can learn from, is there? This is a journey you've been on your own.
Right. I mean, I think you learn from the people you have. Yes. So you learn from the people that...
But in terms of a precedent or an example to follow...
there's not really
There's no one you can ring up and say, what did you do when that happened? Because I'm really struggling with this bit of it.
Yeah, no, I did. There's not. There isn't anyone like that I can think of, or... but I did have older actors, so that was, I suppose, the closest thing. I remember Gary Oldman talking to me about, like, certain parts of the industry and what they might make you feel, and also he was one of the few people that would, like, from outside my agents or my dad, and Gary was one of the few people that, like, talked to me about the position I was going to be in after Potter and how to, I can't say it on the radio, but he was like, he said, you are going to have bleep money, and you should, basically said, like, make the career you want, don't do what other people think, and which was sort of something I think I was going to do anyway. Sure. But it's nice to have it from someone like that as well, going, to actually sort of say it to you. But yeah, there's not a huge amount of precedent, but I would say there's not for every person who gets famous young, every situation is completely different. And the fact that I made it out, like, okay and relatively sane and relatively healthy I mean, it's a lot of luck. It's a huge amount.
Well, it's luck and judgment, I suppose. And you mentioned your dad. Family must be absolutely crucial to this.
Yes, 100%. I mean,
feet on ground business.
My parents were both, I was also really lucky because, they were both in the industry, and my mum was a casting director. My dad was a literary agent. But they'd both been actors and not had a very good time doing it. I mean, they'd had fun and good memories, but ultimately hadn't been kind to them. Sure. So they changed jobs, and they had the perfect amount of knowledge about the industry to guide me and to be really helpful, but they weren't so in it that they were jaded by it, and they were still, like, excited for me. So I lucked out with them, with the fact that we filmed it in the UK, and I got to, when I think of what growing up as a famous kid must be like in LA, yes. I do think, like, I don't know how you would do.
Well, some of the stories are apocalyptic.
I go insane now when I'm in LA for too long. I don't know what it would be like it's not normal.
And you've got 12-year-olds surrounded by grown-ups telling them that they can have whatever they want and do whatever they want.
I mean, it's mad. So I'm always loath to, a lot of the time people want me to comment on, like, Lindsay Lohan or Justin Bieber or anything like that, because there's, like, a narrative growing up around all of us, which is in one way very pleasant, which is like they're the child stars who, like, did good and made it out okay.
Yes.
But actually, I'm always loath to criticize, because there is no blueprint for being famous when I think
that's the point, isn't it?
Right, and I think what it's like to suddenly come up against a load of, if you don't know who you are and what your values are, by the time you get to a certain point, you're going to get to an age and the world will be presenting you with what they think you are and what they think your values are. And it's very hard to to not just give into that and think, oh, that's clearly what I should be doing. People used to say to me all the time, like, oh, if I was famous, I would be living your life way differently. In that I don't do a huge amount with my money. I'm not particularly extravagant, and everyone thinks that they would. And there are moments when I go, man, am I really bad at being famous?
But even worse at being rich.
Yeah, but terrible.
No, I understand that. What was the craziest thing that was written about you when you were still sort of forming? Because I presume it takes a degree of maturity to be able to rise above it and find it ridiculous.
It's not. I mean, yeah, the ridiculous stuff was always very funny to us.
Was it good?
They would write things. Weirdly, the thing that most affected me most when I was young was, and I didn't really, I was spared from it because they didn't show it to me, but some newspaper, probably the one we're all thinking, went after my mum and dad at one point and like wrote like a really scathing article about them and how they're like pushy show parents. And, you know, if you add all the details up about, you know, they had been actors, they're still in the industry, yeah, you could come to that conclusion, but they're just not. And that, you know, they would say to me every year, like, if you want to stop, you can. You know, they were always very. But I remember that was the first moment of going like, oh, this is like me doing this now affects other people in my life. That seems unfair and weird.
Because you developed, you were working before you got the big call, weren't you? Have you seen the new David Copperfield yet?
No, apparently it's great.
Because this was your first big.
That was my first
role
job of any kind. Yeah.
Playing young David.
Yes, playing young David, and in what was an incredible cast as well. It's Bob Hoskins, Maggie Smith, Ian McNeice, Paul Whitehouse, Pauline Quirk, Emilia Fox. Like, it's a crazy cast. And so yeah, I got to do that, and so I haven't seen the new one. But
when did you? Well, I think you'll enjoy it. It's absolutely brilliant. It's very different from your version.
Oh yes, I'm sure.
So, where did the bug come from then? Because you mentioned your family were both actors, but where did you first feel the thrill? Was it on a school stage or was it?
I mean, I remember I turned around to my mum after a panto that I saw when I was 5, and I was like, I want to be an actor, and she said, no, you don't, because again, not had a great time. Sure. And then I cycled through a million other things. Then I wanted to be there. It wasn't like
Like what? Tell me what.
Oh, God. I mean, just like what kids imagine jobs to be. So firefighter, astronaut, you know, marine. Just like, there was lots of things that I was never going to do. But, and then that's what's interesting is I am one of the few people that probably got... The bug I got was actually for just being on set.
Right.
More than it was for...
That is rare.
Acting or for films themselves. Like, I have this weird conversation a lot of the time where like I often feel massively under-informed on a film set because people be talking about film and about films I've seen and all this stuff and famous film. And I remember when I did the Swiss Army Man with Paul Dano and the Daniels, they all talking about film. I was just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know any of these movies. I really need to watch them. This is terrible. But I had this moment of realizing that they had all fallen in love with film and that was their reason for getting into film. Right. I was suddenly on a film set and I was like, wow, I love this. I guess I better love acting and film and all the rest of it too. Because I immediately knew that this is where I wanted to be. And I did. I enjoyed acting and I enjoyed doing scenes with people and that was really fun. But it was actually just being in the middle of a film set, I still find is just like an exhilarating... enthralling place to be.
Do you have the show-off gene then? It doesn't sound as if you do necessarily.
Not particularly. Actually, like a huge stumbling block for me. I'm doing a play at the moment, and we've worked it out. But I have a real problem just turning out front and doing stuff in a stage because I think of the audience as being the camera. They are the thing that observes you, and so you never look into that thing. Yeah. That's where like my being on film, I think, is screwing me up. I mean, I think I've got a little bit of the show-off gene, but not.
It's not overdeveloped.
And I think what happened then after getting Potter is because I know that what most, and you mentioned this earlier with the need to please.
Yes.
I know what most people are expecting of somebody.
I think I said you like to please, not that you need to please. There's a crucial distinction. No, you see the difference, of course.
But then. What was I think one of the places that comes from is the fact that I know what everyone thinks a famous young person should be like, and the image they have is pretty terrible. And so I think I want to, with every moment that I get with someone, just prove that like I am not that thing that you thought I was going to be.
How do normal through your sort of teens and 20s, then how would normal friendships work? Given that you were usually away, you were usually on set, your existence was ridiculous by any objective measure, and yet you clearly like talking and you enjoy company, and you're not no sense of you being aloof. So how did that play out?
Well, I mean, film sets are fantastic for that, and a lot of my friends were people on set, and film sets are fantastic places to just hang out if you want to hang out and just like chat to some interesting people. And then it's over, and then most of them go back to their families and stuff. So yeah, I think the two best friends I made as a teenager were people I met. One of them is my friend Jess, who is a physicist, who we both met at a party that we had both gone to because our respective best friends wanted to make out with each other, and they were just we were both brought along as wingmen, and then we ended up sort of chatting for the rest of the night. And then and I think she was I think one of the reasons Jess and I stayed so close friends is that she has always been, and is still, God bless her, incredibly understanding about my life. But at 14, most kids were not. So most kids were like, well, if you can't hang out with us, then I'm just literally going to forget you exist. And whereas Jess sort of was always able to go, you have a crazy life, clearly. I'm going to see you when I can. And that's so I think, but and generally speaking, friendships has always just meant just like hanging out at someone's house.
It's like you said at the beginning, actually. You're fascinating to everybody else, but to you, you're just me. Just the life I've lived. And I mean, it's generous of you, really, to appreciate that everybody else finds it riveting.
Well, no, I think even that, and now I go, oh, right, I suppose the fact that I'm sort of even vaguely like do normal things is also fascinating in its weird way.
Do you do sliding doors? Do you ever think, what if Potter hadn't happened? What would I mean, because, you'd probably, I think, still want to be an actor, but you wouldn't be getting offered necessarily the quality of the work that you have been offered.
I mean, no, very unlikely. I think it's not so much that I look back and go, oh, what would have happened if? It's more that I see things about my life or the way I am or anything like that, and then go back to Potter and go, oh, is that because of Potter and because of the things that happened there? Or would that have been, is that just inborn in me, and would I have got that anyway? Those are always the both interesting and very frustrating questions, because there's just no answer.
They're not answerable, are they? Have you been lonely?
In life? Oh, God, yes, of course, absolutely. Yeah. I think particularly sort of towards the end of Potter, but I wouldn't have called it loneliness. I wouldn't have known what to call it. It was more just, but looking back, I was coming to the end of something massive, and I had no idea how my life was going to go after that. And I think that was probably really frightening for me at that point. But it's been sort of, if you had told me 10 years on, because we're sort of 10 years on from 10 years on now, we're at that point.
God, I feel old.
I know, it's crazy. Well, I'm now somebody I'm not on Twitter, but my girlfriend does show me bits and pieces, and when it was my birthday last year, apparently somebody had tweeted, Daniel Radcliffe is 30 and you are in a nursing home.
It's a bit close to home.
I am just like a terrible yardstick now for everyone's age.
You're everybody's sort of portrait in the attic. But genuine loneliness.
But like if you told me that 10 years on since Potter, I would have made like, I don't know if I've probably done 10 or so films and 3 or 4 or 5 plays, and I would have bitten your hand off if you told me I would be still.
And presumably at that age, when it all came to a head, you were too young to appreciate the financial security side of things as well, because that's generally not something you worry.
I'll never be able to fully appreciate the financial security aspect of it, because I've always will have had some degree of it. It's an amazingly fortunate position to be in, and I'm very lucky that I and again, I can sit here and say I'm lucky for money not to be a motivating factor in my life, because I have it, and that is but I think I was also very lucky to have people around me who gave me a good attitude towards money, and who were always it should give you room to maneuver and do the things you want in life, and that's what it does. Ultimately, that's more the thing it gets you more than any material possession is it gives me particularly autonomy over my career and what I want to do next and what I want to do, and doing anything at all is I don't just have to charge into things because I need the money.
Oh, yeah, because you got a tax bill to pay or something like that.
That will be, yes.
Huh?
I still do pay tax.
No, I know you pay tax. I'm not looking for a scoop. I just sort of, I may have done a couple of things in my career because I had a tax bill to pay. So I was just drawing on personal experience. And again, it's another example of you've only got knowledge of the life that you've lived.
Right.
So when you came out of the series and you started thinking about what sort of parts you wanted to play, and I've got a fairly good knowledge of what you've done, and like a lot of people who are nearly 50, there's almost a degree of, I don't know, it's a weird form of affection when you watch the career of someone who moved you and also moved your children as an actor. I don't think you've put a foot wrong yet, have you? I mean, everything you've done has been.
I mean, look, there's nothing I wouldn't.
Even the Flatulent Corpse had enormous charm. That film.
The Flatulent Corpse is a film called Swiss Army Man. For anyone who doesn't know what the hell we have started talking about, is like one of the most beautiful films I've ever made.
Yes,
it has
really
no
is.
right to be, but it
really
does.
is. But how did you know? Because I mean, to be honest, if I used to be a show business journalist, I'd have had great fun writing up. Before the film came out, I'd have had great fun writing up what an appalling error you'd made and what a dreadful career cul-de-sac you'd just gone 100 miles an hour up. But you got that script. You have people who can advise you. But how did you see the magic there?
It was very, like, with that script, I was just like, this is very clearly written by people who are brilliant. Like, it wasn't, right. You know, because I've read weird scripts as well, weird scripts that amount to nothing and are weird for the sake of it. And with that one, it was just like, oh no, this is all being done for such a clear reason, and it shouldn't work, but it does. And I mean, and then when you speak to those guys and you see their music videos, you're like, okay, no, you've got something going on here. We should do this. But generally speaking, I am. As I've always said, I'm lucky to be able to pick and choose the things I do. I don't think of the things I do as being weird, but I have been told they are so many times now that I think I have to accede that they are in some way unexpected or weird. But I do think I get
unexpected isn't the same as weird.
No, and some of them's full out weird, like Swiss Army Man. That can be in the weird category, fine.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think I get an unnatural amount of credit for this because people saw me do one thing for so long that then seeing lots of different things. Whereas I think most actors, like if you look at, I don't know, off the top of my head, Adam Driver, is incredibly varied in sort of the roles and things that he does, and I think most actors want that. Also, I think I have to find what I'm not. In some ways, I'm not a conventional kind of leading man hero archetype. So I've had to, but that was the thing that people knew me as initially.
Right.
So I've sort of got to find other ways of being, where else can I sit in films? And where else can I be,
And plays. And we better move shortly onto the current sort of avalanche of work that is about to land at our feet. But before that, you're an intellectual, aren't you?
I don't know about that.
No,
I like thinking about things.
You can't do. I mean, yes, exactly. I remember the last time I interviewed you, and we touched on some of the stuff you were reading, and it was clear that you like to feel your brain stretched to its absolute limit.
Yeah, definitely.
And in a way, your work is the kind of acting equivalent of the intellectual.
Totally, and particularly, and I'm not trying to force a segue, but particularly with this play at the moment, because it is such a...
Well, Beckett is. I mean, if you're uncomfortable looking out at the audience, and, Beckett is, even for the brightest brains in history, it can be quite impenetrable. And the piece you're doing is, even by the standards of Samuel Beckett, is tricky.
Yes, it
is. So why? When that call came and you sat and thought and wrestled, am I going to do this? What was it that called to you?
Part of that was very much the sort of the headier side of it, because I did read that and go, I understand enough of this to know that I don't understand it.
Yes.
But I'm fascinated by it, and I want to.
That's kind of what I was trying to say in my own clumsy way.
No. That's exactly. You're exactly right. I just, it's and. You know, and oh my God, thank God I'm not doing it on my own, because I wouldn't have been able to. But Richard Jones, our director, and Alan Cumming, and to be able to work on this material with them and to sort of unpack it and work out what all these things mean, it has been really, really fun. But it was the sort of the challenge of it was something that I wanted to do, and also I found it really funny. Like I did find, even reading it, I was like, oh no, I can see how this could be very, very funny in a very dark way.
Well, then you're definitely an intellectual, because to laugh out loud at Beckett, my old English teacher would want to sort of wrap you up and take you home at this point. It's such a, either you get it and you can work towards getting it,
right?
And you know, you watch something like Krapp's Last Tape and you spend 50% of your mind is wondering what the hell is going on, and the other 50% is just conscious of being in the presence of something very special.
Something incredible.
Endgame's not dissimilar, is it? In a way to that.
It's a beautiful conversation about cycles and ending and concepts. Like I think he said at one point, like, that it's not a play, it's a situation. Yes. And I sort of dispute that slightly, because there are narrative things that happen in it, but it's a play about two people that hate each other but need each other and can't escape each other but are desperate to be alone but can't be alone. Like, it's about sick people needing each other, and somehow in that we hopefully make people laugh with jokes about stuffed dogs and flea powder.
It's on at the Old Vic at the moment. Is it? Do you get stage fright?
No, not stage fright in the I can't go on kind of way. I think you get a little bit every night of that sense of like, what if tonight it all goes wrong? But
with Beckett, the audience wouldn't know. Apart from the real purists in the audience, they've got the text off by heart. You could almost do anything in a Beckett play, and then just style it out with this.
You're almost right, and we almost have.
No, I'm sure not.
But we, that is very true. They wouldn't know. You do sort of have to just. But it's not so much even things going wrong with the lines. It is just like some days it feels bad, and some days you just feel like you're terrible up there. And I've had it in every play I've ever done. Like, you'll have 6 great shows a week, and then there's that one where you're just like, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything right. I can't get it. But those, it's
probably scary when you stop feeling like that, because that's probably when things are going to go wrong, and you're going to be too out there to notice. I watched Alan Cumming get nervous the other day before our first show, and he's one of the most accomplished stage actors or actors of any kind I've ever worked with. So I was like, okay, if you're still getting a bit nervous, I can too. That's all right. Although you took Equus from the West End to Broadway, so your own. Yes, I like the fact that you could remove Potter from your CV and you'd still be among the most accomplished 30-year-old actors.
Yeah, it is really nice. I wouldn't have. I would maybe not have had the opportunity to begin with, but
doesn't matter. Thank you. You wouldn't have gone from the West End to Broadway if you'd been shy.
That's true. Yeah, that's very good.
Technical term.
Yeah, they're not. They don't do pity. So.
No, precisely that. And the new film, Escape from Pretoria, in which, and I don't know if this is an annoying observation for you, you look much older than you've ever looked before.
Oh, great. No, which is good, actually.
Is it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's time to, I'm ready to start like looking at slightly older and playing slightly older characters. I feel like that's appropriate.
And is that a real beard?
Yes, it is. It's real beard, not
congratulations.
Real hair. Thank you. I know. I'm clean shaven at the moment, which is devastating for the play.
So this is a prison break thriller, but it comes out while you're on stage. Well, it comes out in March actually, but you're still on stage at the Old Vic, and the second series of Miracle Workers has just dropped on Netflix as well. So to people outside the industry, how have you done all this in the last 6 months?
Yes, so it does look like I'm just crazily productive and doing 3 jobs at once. This is actually, I shot the Miracle Workers series that is coming out now on Sky Comedy was the one I shot
on Sky Comedy.
I think Sky Comedy. Yeah, no worries. No.
My 13-year-old's in charge of the remote control, and she absolutely loves it.
Okay, no, it's great. The first series is excellent. The second series is coming out at the moment in the States. So the first series that is out here at the moment was shot about a year and a half ago. Escape from Pretoria was shot about a year ago, and then we've just shot the second series of Miracle Workers, and then now I'm doing the play, and then a movie I shot 2 years ago will be coming out in about a month. So it's basically like 2 years worth of work is coming out in about a 3-month period. So you will, everybody listening, I'm sorry, you will probably get a lot of me on various shows for a little while. But
you have no control over any of this
from your life
because of the edit and because of the
it's just
industry machinations.
And in fact, actually, it's much like I feel confident that the two movies are probably both really annoyed they're coming out so close together because it's not it's just the way it shakes out sometimes.
And it's not your fault. You have no. So Miracle Workers is a fascinating piece of work because again, not unlike a couple of things that we've mentioned already in this. I do wonder how you read that script and thought, yes, this is very special.
Well, that was actually based on a book that I'd read, and I, in my eternal optimism and slight hubris, went to the writer and said, you got any plans with this? Could I adapt it and maybe do something with it? And he just went like, oh yeah, well, we were thinking of adapting it. And I was like, okay, hands off, you can adapt it. You're a much better writer than me. And he's a guy called Simon Rich, who I had that meeting where I basically told him how much I loved his book. And he said, well, if we ever do anything with it, we'll let you know. And then it was about a year after that he called with the idea to do it as a limited series. And he wasn't interested in, and nor was I, doing something that then runs for years and years and years. Sure. So the thing we did, which TBS, the American channel, allowed us to do, is do an anthology series. So every year takes place in a different setting at a different time. So I essentially get to make a comedy series with my favorite comedy writer every year for the next few years with a different character.
It's pretty exciting.
Pretty great.
Isn't it? So you just said something which I've written down here. Ask him about books.
Oh, yes.
But not about what you're reading. I have a theory that because you just mentioned that you were flirting with the idea of writing that adaptation yourself.
Yeah, yes.
I presume there's a drawer somewhere with the collected works of Daniel Radcliffe, which is the next thing that you'll share with the world. I don't know.
That's what I'd love to.
Do you write?
I do write. Yeah, I used to write poetry, and a lot of it was very bad. Teenage and stuff, but it was good for me to do.
Yes.
And then I realised I don't think I have the discipline to write novels or even short stories, but I do think scripts is what is where I can focus my efforts. And I'd love to write something and then direct it as well.
I was going to add directing to that, because when you talk about the enthusiasm other people had for film, that's where it naturally...
Yeah. I mean, I love being on a film set, and as a director, you are in the middle of such an amazing group of people. I remember Gary Oldman again actually saying to me that as a director you're being asked to make a creative decision every second of the day, and how exciting that is. And I would definitely I'm
desperately trying to remember who else I interviewed who spoke of Gary Oldman in such glowing terms, but not just as a brilliant actor, but as someone who took a genuine warm interest in other actors and younger actors in particular, like a kind of mentor.
Yeah,
type,
very much so. I mean, he definitely was a sort of, he was on films 3 to 5 and was hugely influential on me in that time.
So what sort of stuff do you write? What have you got? What are you pitching at the moment?
It's all sort of dark comedy stuff.
I can make some calls if you want. I can have
we might head down the line. Actually, that might be one of them. There's one that is sort of people have always said there's always that thing of write what you know, and having such an odd rarefied life that I'm always like, can people really relate to anything about my life? But in the last couple of years, I did find an idea for a story, not such about my life, but actually sort of about it involves a press junket and that sort of stuff. So I do think there's stories to be told about the industry in general, and I would love to have a go at that, because I think it's something I can speak to with authenticity and also be funny about, hopefully.
And when you mentioned having a meeting with the Miracle Workers writer Simon Richards, does anyone ever say no when you seek a meeting with them? You don't like questions like this,
yet, do you? Not yet. Or maybe if they did, it was all they're not available. So I probably wouldn't have been told if anyone did turn down to me. But I don't think I ever really. I think actually, to be honest, I think Simon is maybe the only person I've ever requested a meeting.
Because you loved the book so much.
Oh, the only other person that I tried to meet once to talk to was Guillermo del Toro to talk about something, and he took my call and was the kindest man. I've never worked with him. I think we maybe met once, but like, I had an idea for a script that, because I heard he was doing, and I pitched him like my idea, and he heard me out and was so sweet and was so nice. And then at the end of the call told me they've got a very established, very famous writer that is already working on it. And I was like, cool, I'm much cheaper, but thank you for your honesty. But he was so nice. He did not have to take it at all.
No, but I suppose that's, in every industry there are good people and bad people, and you've been quite lucky.
I've been really lucky. I haven't had many of the bad ones at all. I've heard lots of horror stories. But
how long is Endgame running for?
Till March 26th.
March 26th, by which time Escape from Pretoria will be out.
Yes.
And the new film will also be knocking at the door of your local multiplex.
Miracle Workers will be over. So
yes, I suppose it will. So what's next for you? Do you know at this point?
So the next film to come out is a film called Guns Akimbo, which is crazy. And then the trailer is online. We'll leave you to your own devices. And then time off.
Is it?
Then I will be taking a little bit of time. Yeah, that'll be nice. I've been go since like last September, so I'm going to be happy by the time we...
And final question, which is a weird one actually, but last time you came in, which must be 7 or 8 years ago, because my kids were tiny, and you spoke about what you were reading, and I just searched my phone to check the date that this was happening, or to check the time that this interview was happening, and I put a note to myself. I said, send him a copy of Saki, H.H. Munro. Oh, have you read any Saki?
I have read some Saki.
God for that, because I was feeling very, very... I don't know why, but you must have mentioned some books last time, and I thought, well, he'd love Saki.
No, I do, absolutely. Those are some of the first short stories I read, and were like, oh, these are really funny and weird. And
yes, exactly that. Yeah. They're right up your strasse.
Oh, no, that's great.
Good.
Oh, thank you so much. That was really
Well, it's fun. The thought that counts.
No, it was very much the thought that counts.
Thank you, Daniel. Cheers, mate. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Full Disclosure. Don't forget to rate it and indeed subscribe to the whole series on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts. Do join me for the next episode, and until then, goodbye.